Every empire in this series was a complex machine. Some were built on military might, others on religious fervor. But the most enduring, the most insidious, were built on algorithms, not lines of code, but lines of command, supply, and control. 4 centuries before the digital age, a Mesoamerican civilization perfected this cold, calculated approach. The Aztec Triple Alliance, often mischaracterized as a brute force military power, was fundamentally an economic engine. It didn't just conquer territories, it integrated them into a vast, meticulously engineered supply chain. It didn't just demand tribute, it programmed dependency. This was an empire that functioned less like a kingdom and more like a tech giant, meticulously controlling its platform, its developers, and its market. This system, which we will call the Aztec algorithm, created a tiered network where conquered city-states were forced to specialize and supply specific goods. It built market dominance through enforced specialization and centralized distribution. It was an ecosystem, a monopoly, a precursor to the digital platforms that define our modern economy. This episode dissects the Aztec algorithm, revealing how a Mesoamerican empire built a supply chain monopoly and how its mechanics echo in the corporate strategies of companies like Apple today. The entity known as the Aztec Empire was, in fact, a strategic confederation, the Triple Alliance, Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan. 3 city-states bound by a shared objective: systematic resource extraction and market control. This was not a singular, monolithic state in the European sense, but a powerful, coordinated economic bloc. Their initial phase was one of rapid, calculated expansion. Military campaigns were not random acts of aggression, they were strategic acquisitions. Each conquest was a step in a larger resource map, securing access to specific raw materials or established trade routes. These newly acquired territories were not typically annexed outright. Instead, the alliance often employed a strategy of indirect rule. Local rulers, known as Tlatelolco, were frequently permitted to retain their positions. This minimized administrative overhead for the alliance. It allowed for a facade of local autonomy, but beneath this surface, the true power shifted. The local leadership became agents of the Triple Alliance, responsible for enforcing imperial directives and, critically, for collecting and remitting tribute. This tribute was not arbitrary plunder. It was a systematic tax, a mandatory contribution levied on the conquered Altapatal, or city-states. This was the initial licensing fee, the cost of remaining within the alliance's economic orbit, or rather under its control. The protocol established was clear. Compliance guaranteed relative stability. Defiance guaranteed swift and brutal military intervention. This framework created the foundational layer of the Aztec algorithm, a network of subordinate entities, each integrated into the larger imperial system, each with a defined role in the upcoming economic architecture. The military conquest was merely the onboarding process. The true mechanism of control was economic. The true genius of the Aztec system lay in its meticulous design of the tribute network. This was not a generic tax. It was a highly differentiated demand, tailored to the specific ecological and economic capabilities of each conquered region. The alliance didn't just want goods, it wanted specific goods from specific places in specific quantities, delivered at precise intervals. Consider the geography of Mesoamerica, a mosaic of microclimates and distinct resource zones. The Aztec algorithm exploited this diversity. City-states in the lowland regions, rich in cotton, were mandated to supply vast quantities of textiles, often in standardized sizes and designs. Communities near volcanic deposits were required to provide obsidian, a crucial material for tools and weaponry. Tropical regions were compelled to furnish exotic feathers, cacao beans, a form of currency and luxury good, and jaguar pelts. Coastal areas provided shells, fish, and salt. Gold, jade, and precious stones were extracted from regions where they naturally occurred. This forced specialization was not merely efficient, it was a deliberate strategy to create interdependency. A city-state forced to dedicate its labor and resources to producing cotton in specific imperial dimensions could not easily become self-sufficient in, for example, obsidian tools or cacao. It became a specialized cog in a larger machine. Its economic viability became inextricably linked to the imperial demand and the imperial supply of other necessary goods. This created a powerful disincentive for rebellion. To break from the alliance meant losing access to the broader network of specialized goods that the alliance itself facilitated. The enforcement mechanism for this intricate system was the Calpixqui. These imperial tribute collectors were stationed in conquered territories, acting as the alliance's account managers and auditors. Their role was critical. They ensured the quantity and quality of tribute goods met imperial standards. They oversaw collection, maintained detailed records, and resolved disputes. Their presence was a constant reminder of imperial authority, a direct line of communication between the central power in Tenochtitlan and the periphery. The logistics were immense. Tribute payments were typically due every 80 days, a relentless cycle that ensured a continuous flow of resources into the imperial core. These goods were transported along established routes, requiring extensive organization, storage facilities, and labor. The system was a marvel of pre-industrial supply chain management, designed not for equitable trade, but for centralized wealth accumulation and the strategic control of regional economies. With a constant, diverse stream of tribute flowing into Tenochtitlan, the Triple Alliance solidified its position as the undisputed economic hegemon of Mesoamerica. Tenochtitlan became the central hub, the ultimate distribution center for an unparalleled variety of specialized goods. This centralization was not accidental. It was the next layer of the Aztec algorithm designed to establish market dominance. The Pochteca were central to this strategy. These were the long-distance merchants, but their role transcended simple trade. They were the authorized distributors, the eyes and ears of the empire, economic agents with quasi-diplomatic status. The Pochteca ventured into unconquered territories, establishing trade relations and gathering intelligence. More importantly, within the empire, they facilitated the distribution of goods back to peripheral areas. A city-state that produced cotton for tribute might then purchase obsidian tools or cacao from Pochteca merchants who sourced these goods from the central Tenochtitlan markets. This created a closed loop. Tribute flowed in and controlled, marked up goods flowed out, further entrenching dependency and enriching the imperial core. The Pochteca effectively controlled the platform's internal marketplace. The physical manifestation of this market dominance was the Conquest, the marketplaces. The greatest of these was Tlatelolco, adjacent to Tenochtitlan, a sprawling commercial center described by chroniclers as one of the largest in the world. This market was not a free-for-all. It was highly regulated by state officials, with designated areas for specific goods, standardized measures, and even a court to resolve commercial disputes. Tlatelolco was the app store of the Aztec world, a controlled environment where the empire dictated terms, ensuring order and, critically, maintaining its economic leverage. This system fostered a concept of controlled scarcity. By centralizing the supply of specialized goods, the Aztecs could manipulate their availability and price, even within their own empire. They could flood markets with certain items or restrict others, influencing regional economies and reinforcing their economic power. Independent economic development in conquered regions was stifled. While local economies continued, their primary function became to serve the imperial core. They were efficient cogs in the Aztec machine, producing specific components, rather than independent innovators developing diverse economic bases. Any failure to comply with tribute mandates or market regulations was met with severe consequences, ranging from economic sanctions to military intervention, reinforcing the absolute power of the platform's terms of service. The Aztec algorithm for economic control finds a striking modern parallel in the ecosystem strategy of companies like Apple. The mechanics are separated by centuries in technology, but the underlying principles of platform dominance, forced specialization, and controlled distribution remain constant. Apple's initial conquest was not military, but technological. The iPhone, a revolutionary piece of hardware, established a dominant position in the mobile market. This was the acquisition of the territory, the user base. Once the hardware platform was established, the next step was to create a controlled economic environment around it, the App Store. The App Store functions as Apple's Tenochtitlan, its central marketplace. Developers, much like the Aztec city-states, are compelled to operate within this ecosystem if they wish to access the vast user base. There is no alternative official route for distributing applications to iOS devices. This is the App Store's equivalent of a geographical choke point, a mandatory passage. This creates a form of forced specialization. Developers invest significant resources in creating applications specifically for iOS, utilizing Apple's proprietary APIs and design guidelines. While some applications are cross-platform, the deepest integrations and optimizations are often tied to the iOS environment. This makes it costly and difficult for developers to easily port their entire operation to a competing platform, creating a dependency on Apple. Much like a Mesoamerican city-state specialized in cotton production, found it difficult to independently pivot to Obsidian tool manufacturing. The most direct parallel to the Aztec tribute system is Apple's revenue-sharing model, the 30% cut. For every transaction conducted through the App Store, Apple collects a significant percentage. This is the tribute developers must pay for access to the market, for distribution, for payment processing, and for the security and infrastructure provided by the platform. This fee is non-negotiable for most developers, a mandatory cost of doing business within Apple's ecosystem. It flows directly to the Imperial Core. Apple's control extends beyond just the revenue cut. Its rigorous app review process acts like the Calpixqui, meticulously scrutinizing applications for compliance with a vast set of guidelines. These guidelines dictate functionality, user interface, data privacy, and even business models. Failure to comply results in rejection, denying market access. This ensures quality control and adherence to the platform's terms of service, much like the Aztec tribute collectors ensured the quality and quantity of goods. Furthermore, Apple controls the distribution channels entirely. There is no side-loading of apps outside the App Store without significant technical hurdles and security warnings, reinforcing the App Store's monopoly on digital distribution. Developers are dependent on Apple for visibility, discovery, and ultimately their revenue stream. This comprehensive control over the market, the participants, and the flow of value mirrors the Aztec Empire's strategic management of its supply chain and economic dependencies. Every algorithm, no matter how efficient, possesses inherent limitations. The Aztec system, optimized for resource extraction and centralized control, possessed a critical vulnerability. It optimized for output, not loyalty. The forced specialization and constant tribute demands bred resentment among the conquered city-states. The benefits of inclusion in the imperial network were often outweighed by the extractive burden. The algorithm was efficient, but it was not symbiotic. This internal dissent festered. When an external shock arrived in the form of the Spanish conquistadors, these resentful city-states did not rally to the defense of Tenochtitlan. Instead, they recognized an opportunity. They became willing allies of the new invading force, viewing the Spanish as a lesser, or at least a different, oppressor. The developers revolted, providing crucial intelligence, logistical support, and military manpower that ultimately led to the downfall of the Triple Alliance. The algorithm, designed to secure resources, failed to secure allegiance. Its strength in economic control became its fatal weakness in political cohesion. The modern parallel confronts similar challenges. Apple's ecosystem, while immensely profitable and efficient, generates friction. Developers chafe under the 30% cut, the strict app review process, and the lack of alternative distribution channels. Regulatory bodies globally are scrutinizing the anti-competitive aspects of platform monopolies, initiating antitrust investigations, and proposing legislation to force open ecosystems. The developers are not revolting with weapons, but through lawsuits, public criticism, and lobbying efforts. The core argument stands. The Aztec system was a powerful, sophisticated algorithm for resource control, creating a dominant economic platform through forced specialization and centralized distribution. Its success was in its efficiency. Its ultimate failure was in neglecting the human element, the cost of absolute control, and the resentment it inevitably generated. Like any system built on absolute power, its efficiency contained the seeds of its own destruction. The Aztec algorithm proved that an empire built on economic control could be as brutal and as fragile as one built on conquest alone. It was a system designed to extract maximum value until the very components it relied upon turned against it. And when the external force came, the algorithm had no answer. It simply crashed.